I sort of, I think like many others who did research and did read back into history and other stuff, they have kind of, we came to this understanding that it seems that the ancient idea of gods in different religions, it was in fact not supreme beings, but more like advanced civilizations that have been on Earth, have come to Earth, and an ancient mind, as an old human, would have worshipped these advanced civilizations as gods.
Hey, before you start the show, if you're on YouTube or Rumble, like, subscribe, and hit that bell. You want to make a comment? Go for it. It's America. And if you're on Spotify, hit those 5 stars. I appreciate it, guys. Thanks for the support. Let's go. All right, on today's episode, my guest here is Sergio Halabi. Did I say that correctly?
Yes, you said that correctly.
Perfect. I want to make sure that I'm saying it correctly. So again, welcome to the podcast. Welcome to Beyond the Frequency 369. And if you introduce yourself, let everybody know who you are, the things that you're into, and also how can people reach you if they want to contact you.
Yeah, sure. First, thank you for having me on your podcast. And I also host my own podcast. I think we sort of share the same topics when it comes to that. There's something with these topics, like once you get into it, the rabbit hole goes so deep, and you just want to surround yourself with people with the same mindset, and talk about it more and more. But basically, my podcast, which is Paradigm Shift with Sergio, is my main, purpose for it is to kind of bring in this ancient information, old philosophical ideas, some ideological beliefs, and kind of connect the dots between all of them, try to understand what our ancestors were trying to say, what they believed in. I sort of, I think like many others who did research and did read back into history and other stuff, they have kind of, we came to this understanding that it seems that the ancient idea of gods in different religions, it was in fact not supreme beings, but more like advanced civilizations that have been on Earth, have come to Earth, and an ancient mind, as an old human, would have worshipped these advanced civilizations as gods. They may have taken advantage of that, established themselves as our rulers, and we basically, like I believe, as humanity, we have lost sight of what true spirituality is, what is our true purpose in this world, in the universe, what is the true creator, the source of everything. So we've been basically worshipping false idols, and I would want to, shed light as much as I can on it and make sure that for future generations as well, that, we're part of this process of re-understanding what really happened.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Sergio, I appreciate you explaining that. And I agree with you. Everybody gets so complacent. Everybody says, well, I was told this information, so it must be true. Like, why?
Yeah.
Why must it be true?
Exactly.
And a lot of, there's a lot of people who just kind of, they're okay with that idea. They're okay with, like, even though some people may feel like something's not right, something in them doesn't allow them to go search. They're just like, I know there's danger over there or something isn't right, but I'm okay over here, So it takes people like us, like you and me, and people like-minded like us to go ahead and do that work, put in that time and that effort to research and spread the good information. I wanted to ask you something, Sergio.
And what's
Yeah.
interesting, just to add to your point, is that we're not actually going and researching in places that are so deeply hidden, or everything we read is really out there. You just have to read it again with a different light. Like I think most of us have a background in religion. We grew up religious, or we grew up exposed to any form of religion, especially the Abrahamic ones. And if you just reread it with certain, with a new understanding, then you will see it that wait, this does not add up. This was not what I was taught, because what is written is different than what I was taught. And all you have to do is just read that again, and you will see how many discrepancies there are, how much it does not make sense, and how much all these ancient religions have been trying to say the same things. We just don't accept it, and we want to live in this bubble of fear and of safety. And I don't want to change my mindset. But like you said, like it takes people to go out and talk about it, and then you sow the seeds, and then you see what happens.
Exactly. I'm interested, Sergio, too. I ask this to a lot of the guests because we all aren't just born into the knowledge that we have now. So
Yep.
I always ask all my guests, before you even knew all this and started doing your research and started getting down these rabbit holes, who were you? Talk to us about who you were before you got into this, your background, things like that.
Yep. So basically, I was a very, like, the most typical Catholic boy you could imagine. I was an altar boy. I was going to church every day. Grew up in a very Catholic family in the Arab world. I mean, I'm originally from Lebanon, from Beirut, and so there was this huge influence when it comes to Christianity and Abrahamic religions in general. And I've always been very interested. Like, even from a young age, I remember I would be maybe 10 or 11, and I would stay up late and watch like the History Channel, watch the Discovery Channel, anything related to like ancient Egypt, to all of that. I would stay up, and it was always very interesting to me. Anything that was made me ask questions. Question even about, like, the nature of our reality. When I was 15, I watched The Matrix for the first time, and I was like, this is a completely, I'm a different person right now. So there was
Yeah.
always this kind of interest for me into the unknown, into the paranormal, into questioning. And then a couple of years ago, maybe around now 7-8 years ago, I was asked a question about religion in itself, and I realized that I don't really have the answer for it. So I decided, I was like, okay, maybe it's time for me to go back and start reading again, reading the religion I was taught, but as an adult, because obviously we were all, indoctrinated into it and taught what you have to believe and what you have to think. So now I was looking at it from a new light and new eyes, and I was completely, like, blown away. I was caught so off guard by how much inconsistencies there are, by how much different religions share the same stuff. Like, everything within the Abrahamic religions was taken from a previous religion, and the one before that, and from the Babylonians and the Akkadians and the Mesopotamia, and like, just collecting different stories, changing the names, changing the idea of having multiple gods into one god, and so on. And then that made me go deeper and deeper into this. Like, why has this happened, and why is it that when we were kids, yes, we were taught, for example, about the Egyptian mythology. We were taught about the Roman mythology, but how come we weren't taught about the Mesopotamian mythology? I mean, like, that seems to be such an important aspect of our, entire civilization, right? Like, it's literally the first civilization and the first religion. So I was looking into it. Why is this not something more mainstream? Why is it not taught in schools? And once you look into it, you actually start to understand why it's not taught, because it aligns so much with Abrahamic religions, and it shows you how much everything was copy pasted from there and changed. And I'm like, wow,
Yeah.
so there was a deliberate attempt on an educational level to hide that information from us, And whenever I see that, I feel like, yep, I want to jump into it even more. And then, the rabbit hole led me to Graham Hancock, to Greg Berradin, to Paul Wallace, to all these people who have talked about all these ancient civilizations, and, like, the different books I've read, Fingerprints of the Gods, Chariots of the Gods, Stage of Time. all these books are have sort of like combined and connected certain dots here and there about these ancient beings and ancient civilizations, what has happened to humanity. And it just, there's no stopping it from there. Once you get down there, that's it.
Yeah. Once you start falling down that rabbit hole, it's endless.
Oh my
It
God.
just keeps
Oh, yeah.
going.
It just
It
keeps
gets
going.
deeper.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're right. It seems like, at our history has been focusing on just suppressing the knowledge for the
Yep.
for the population.
Mhm.
But then you have all these secret societies and the oligarch and the elites. They know the truth.
Oh, yeah.
What I would consider the truth that they have is pretty much like a cheat codes to a video game.
Yep.
They know how to navigate through this, matrix, and they're like, oh, we tell them it works this way, but we know it works this other way.
Exactly. Yes.
And this is why
Yep.
we always ask these questions. How are these, high level politicians and celebrities and whatnot, how do they navigate and get away through stuff? Because not only do they make the rules, but they also know how to play the game,
Exactly.
the right
Exactly.
way,
And they hide it from you, obviously,
it's
because
unbelievable.
they hide it from you because obviously they don't want to share that knowledge, and they don't want to share the power
Yeah.
and all the benefits that come from it. And you can see it in every aspect of society, that there's always this suppression of information, and this constant, like a reminder of, you are not good on your own. You need someone who is higher than you to explain things to you. Religion, nope.
Yeah.
You need a priest or a sheikh or a rabbi or whatever. Financial, no, you need a bank and someone who understands that. Your life, you need
Advisor,
someone.
yeah.
It's like there's always someone above you that needs to explain things to you. And that's the level of suppression that has it. We have forgotten how strong we actually are. Like as humans, what we can achieve, what we can do. When you're actually connected with the universe, when you're connected with the source, you can really achieve. It's literally, like you said, it's like a cheat code for a video game. And you can see it like if you do
Yeah.
practice certain things, it's honestly like magic. You know what I mean? Like I feel sometimes there are things that happen with me, and I'm like I want to go tell people, like, you don't understand. It's real. It's real. But
Yeah.
there's so much fear surrounding it. And of course, everything, if you're talking about being powerful, then that's from the devil and that's from Satan. And you're bad to think about how powerful you are. So that's their whole purpose, is to keep you kneeling down under them, so you serve them.
Yeah. And yeah, and to your point, they're always putting somebody above you, and they're always saying that you can't. I mean, even from the time that we're born, like you said, we're born into a religion, into a
Yep.
culture, into a custom,
Mhm.
all this dogma and indoctrinated, this is who you are. They tell you this is your identity,
Yes.
and then now as a toddler, up to about, like, I don't know, 5 or 6 years old, before you start school, how are you discovering the world? You're not discovering it through logic, because you don't really know much. So you're putting things in your mouth, you're touching, you're using the right side of your brain, your creative side. You're
Yep.
imagining, you're seeing colors, and you're seeing the world for how beautiful it is. And then you go and you start school. And then
And
when
they
you
tell
start
you what
school,
to
they start
think
telling
and
you
how to. Yep.
what to think.
Exactly.
And they want you to use your logical side, your rational side of your brain,
Yep.
Speaking about the brain, Sergio, like, I don't know if you can speak on this, but a lot of cultures that I've, understood how they read from left to right, but the Middle Eastern cultures, you guys read from right to left.
That's true. Yes. Yes. We
Is
do
there a
read
reason
from.
for that?
Honestly, there is a reason from a very a cultural point of view, but I think it's I don't remember it exactly, but I do remember that it has something to do with the way you like originally they were carving into the stone, right? Like, because it's like Arabic is an evolution of Aramaic, which is an evolution of another and another. So I think it's because of the way they used to hold certain tools, and then they start writing. They needed it to basically start from the right all the way to the left. But yeah, there
Okay,
is
it makes
a
sense.
yeah, yeah.
It makes sense. My thought on it, and again, I don't have the right answer either, but I thought it was because, again, the right side is your imagination, your creative side, and
Sure.
and I think that if you start reading from right to left, when you start to think, you start using your right side first before your left side. Where
That's actually
we are taught to,
pretty interesting.
yeah,
I never read
yeah, and
anything like this about this, but I will definitely look into that. Very interesting.
yeah, because we're always taught to use our logic, and that's our left side. So we read from left to right, but I don't think that's the right way to do it. So
That's quite an
I wanted to
interesting
ask
idea. I
you,
like it.
yeah, I wanted to ask you about your research. Like, can you name what's a couple of? Do you read tablets? Do you read scrolls? Like, what kind of references do you get your information in your studies?
I mean, I've read all the myths of Mesopotamia, all the tablets, the Epic of Gilgamesh, of course. I've read certain
Yeah.
ancient and obviously from a Abrahamic religion as well. I'm very well versed in that. I'm very well versed in the three religions that came out from Abraham. There's so many links there. I'm also very interested and influenced by Egyptian mythology as well. The way
Yeah.
I see it is me being from this side of the planet, and having a sort of like an Arabic background. There are certain words and certain basically pronunciations of certain words that you can see the influence that came throughout the age and how it still exists. Like for example, I'll give you one thing, like and when it comes to the Mesopotamia and the Anunnaki and all those things, I'm sure you're familiar with that. So their main, the god of the heaven was Enlil, right? The two brothers, there's Enlil and Enki. And
Yep.
what's interesting to me is how, like, when you say Enlil, which is En, which is master of, and then Il is heaven, right? So heaven is for El, Il. And that thing carried on, and you can only notice it if you speak Arabic. So that carried on in all the names of the angels that we are supposed to believe that they came from gods or from Abrahamic religions. So any name that has like when it comes to Michelangelo, Gabriel, Israel, Emmanuel, all of that, they end in Arabic. The pronunciation is the same. So in Arabic you say Enlil, not Enlil. It's Enlil. And the
Mm.
names of these angels in Arabic are Mikhail, Ammanuel, Ismail, Israel. So you can see that there's still that influence there, and they all kind of come
Yeah.
back to the same naming that came from that culture. It's just it wasn't lost
Wow.
over time. It's just different names and all of that. And
Yeah.
this gives you an insight into how these religions evolved and how they kind of, missed out on few edits and to make sure that they cut off the connection they have to the previous religions. They just took ideas from them and then labeled them as their own, basically.
I love that. So, okay, so talking about Enki and Enlil, because yeah, I am familiar with Enki and Enlil and Anu.
The
Their
All Father.
supreme
Yep.
god or things that yeah, the All Father. Um, Talk to me from your version, from your studies. Do you think we were created by the Anunnaki?
Mhm.
What's your give me your thought about how humans came to be who we are today?
So the story that is told again and again, whether it's originally coming from Mesopotamia, which, as far as we know, is the first one, but obviously it's not. There's many before it. But from what we know from a historical point of view, that's the first civilization, that's the first religion, which talks about the Anunnaki. These are these beings who basically were gods, came to Earth, and then they sort of like infused themselves with a local animal to create this hybrid being and taught humanity what to do. This story reverberates all over the world, by the way. There are so many civilizations all over the world that talk about beings coming down from the sky, teaching humanity how to do things. And this is sort of like a missing link when it comes to archaeology and history, because we know from a scientific and biological point of view that for hundreds of thousands of years, you have all these evolutions from the Homo sapiens sapiens to the Homo sapiens, the Homo erectus, all these different versions of humanity before we reach the modern man, which is today, the Homo sapiens. However, we were hunter-gatherer societies, we were living in nature, we were doing everything that aligns with basically a sort of like a species that evolves on Earth. We were part of our environment, we were living in harmony. We didn't really have consciousness to an extent. It was sort of like we were just another animal, part of this greater kingdom. But then, for some unknown reason that not even scientists can explain, suddenly 10,000 years ago, humanity decided to, hey, let's domesticate animals, let's learn math, algebra, chemistry, and physics, and build an entire civilization on cities, build rules and laws, create a religion, and then have everything, learn how to, agriculture, and then settle down. We're no longer hunter-gatherers. We became settlers, right? So this shift in our history does not align with anything, especially over how fast it happened. It was sort of like overnight when you compare it over the thousands of years that we existed. So this is basically where the idea that humanity was exposed to a more advanced being or beings, and they were the ones who sort of infused themselves in us. So the idea is when you're reading these tablets and you take it from a more of a literal point of view, you can start seeing how they literally infuse their own DNA with the DNA of the of one of the animals, and then we sort of came into being, which we have this sort of duality in us, because humanity never felt like we kind of belong on Earth. We are animals, but at the same time we have consciousness, which is no other species has evolved into creating consciousness, like at all. There's this two sides of us that feels are fighting all the time. How many times we hear about, like, there's your instincts within you that want to do something that might be hurtful to others, might be more like on an instinctive level, but then you have your awareness, your self-awareness, your consciousness, which is like, no, this is not okay. We should not be acting like this. There's a duality in us. And this is a very unnatural thing to have happened, because it only happened to one of the species throughout all these billions of years in which Earth existed. It does not align that only one species developed consciousness while all the others did not. So it does make sense once you see it from a biological point of view. And then when you look at these tablets and see what these ancestors were saying, they were literally talking about beings that came down from the heavens. The word Anunnaki actually means from heaven to earth. This is Anunnaki, like they came down from heaven to earth. And the stories of Mesopotamian mythology and religion don't talk about ancient stories. So, for example, like Abrahamic religions talk about things that have happened in the past, right? So you have, Jesus, or you have the prophets, or you have the whatever. Other civilizations, let's say Norse mythology, talks about, Thor and Zeus and all, but they also talk about them in the past. Like, this is what used to happen. In the Anunnaki mythology and Mesopotamian mythology, they talk about them as if they are in front of them, as if someone is actually recording right now. They're not talking about things that happened hundreds of thousands of years ago or hundreds of years ago. It's something that is happening in front of them. So this happened, and then Enki came into the garden and spoke with Adapa, who is Adam, and then they asked him to go up and meet with the council of the gods, and then so the stories are spoken about in the present, not in the past. And this raises a question: why is this mythology so different in its nature, in its vocabulary, than anything else that exists? And I think we can when we look into it, we can agree that they were referring to much more advanced beings, and these beings had the full intention, and they got it to basically create a lesser slave race that does their work for them, that they can order around, and that will not rise up against them, will not create issues or any form of revolution or anything like that. And that's basically the story. It's that they had an agreement with a previous race that was on Earth called the Igigi, and those kind of rose up against the Anunnaki. They were like, we've been doing so much work for thousands of years, we can no longer do it. And then one of the brothers suggested, okay, why don't we create a new race? Let them do our bidding for us, which is the same story, by the way, in the Genesis, in the book of Genesis. God created man to do his bidding. Like, that's literally the same thing. And once they created humanity, the story goes is that one of the two brothers, his name is Enki, sort of like had a more scientific curiosity and more approach to humanity, that how far can we take this? This is a creation that we have made. What more can we get out of them? And that's where the infusion of knowledge came in, taught us how to think for ourselves, gave us consciousness and self-awareness. And that did not sit well with the other brother, with Enlil, because he wanted a slave race, and he wanted a more of a study of a to understand how far he can take it. And that's where the stories go into. There was this flood, there was the Tower of Babel in which it was destroyed. This is stuff that also exists in the Bible, by the way, like the Tower of Babel. And when it says that God or Yahweh said that these people are actually uniting against me, and we need to go down and destroy this tower for them, so that they do not rise up and gain our power. They don't understand, so they don't get to where we are. Let's go down, confuse their languages, confuse them, and have them fight each other. So this was such a clear attempt at dividing humanity, and it has worked, basically, because till now we're still suffering from this division, and we keep fighting each other instead of looking up.
Yeah. Wow. Let's break down some of that, because that's all a lot of great information. There's folks that are listening that are probably familiar with this story, and there's some that probably hearing it for the first time. So let's break
Sure.
down some of the stuff that you had mentioned. So Enki, Enlil, and Anu.
Yeah.
Again, who are these guys?
So Anu is the head, if you want to call him the All-Father, the head of the Anunnaki. He's the greatest leader, number one, and then he was the one who made the decision to come to Earth. Okay, that was his first. And then from Anu had two kids, two sons, Enki and Enlil. And in the naming of that time, Enki, the word ki means earth. Il means heaven. Whenever you put an N, the word En before it, it means master of, or lord of, king of. So Enlil was king of heavens, which means he was always in the skies, and he was hovering above earth. That's what he was in charge of. Enki, because ki means earth, he was in charge of earth. So he was the lord of earth. And so these were the three highest basically ranking people within the entire pantheon.
Now, appreciate that. Now, the Anunnaki, is the Anunnaki one race, or is there a bunch of different races within that term?
So this is where, so this is where certain, theories differ, because there are some theories when they refer to, like, there's the Galactic Federation of the entire galaxy and the entire universe, and there's so many different alien species that are, connected. There's the Anunnaki, the Pleiades, the Andromedas, the blue, the Greys, and all of that. We do know that there were some overlapping when it comes to these aliens. So they kind of like were hybrid beings that existed from most of them. But we also know that originally those who came to Earth were from the same race. And they were not really, if you want, loved by the rest of the Galactic Federation. Like, what they did with Earth was not something that was agreed on, if you want, or looked at in a nice way. They sort of it. So as far as them, no, they are originally one race. Yes.
Okay. And why did the Anunnaki or Anu decide to bring the Anunnaki to Earth? What was on Earth that they needed?
So that's another theory that also needs more studying, but we sadly don't have enough tablets, and some of them are broken or hidden. But one of the theories is related to gold. So gold grows in abundance on Earth, and it doesn't exist in other planets on the solar system. And it was believed at some point that gold is needed for one of their, like basically there is in the atmosphere of their planet, they need gold to facilitate certain things, and they were running out of it. And they found that this planet has that. So when they came, originally it was just to mine gold for as much as they can, and then pack up and leave. That was the original plan for them. And that's what the other race was doing for them for all these years. They're called Igigi or Igigi.
Okay, so they came here for gold to take back to their planet, right?
Yes.
And a lot of these stories, for those of you that aren't aware, you guys can find this also in the Enuma Elish, the Atra Sis, you know.
Yep.
These are ancient tablets. You guys can find these online as well. They've been transcribed from cuneiform to English or any other language for you guys to read it on your own and do your own research. Don't just believe what Sergio or myself are saying. You know, just we're giving you the highlights. It's up to you to do your own research. Now, the gold is an interesting topic because, you know, back then, let's go 250,000 years ago.
Yep.
Gold really had no use for humans at that time. I mean, so, and it's funny that today, gold is still, you know, powerful. Exactly. So it's like, but no one questions it. You know, as the lineage and the generations of humans come into Earth, we just say, oh, well, yeah, gold is valuable, but does anybody know why?
Why exactly?
I don't know, because it's shiny. Like, you know, like now gold now for us in 2024 and moving on forward is important for us for technology. This microphone has gold in it. You know, all the electronics has gold in it. So for us now, gold is useful, but back then, gold was not useful. So that tells you that you can theorize, well, if these Anunnaki came to Earth to mine for gold, they understood how valuable and what benefits gold could do. And that means that if we use it today for technology, could it be possible that the Anunnaki had their own technology? Mm-hmm. This is also, by going down that rabbit hole, it would then explain to you, well, if they were these advanced beings, we're talking about 250,000 years, even 400,000 years ago, if they were these advanced beings, they must have had technology. And what did they use that technology for if they came to Earth, if nothing was here? Well, now you start looking at these ancient megalithic structures, like the pyramids, like the statues, you know, all these things that we now look at it, you know, we go on tour guides and we're like, wow, that's interesting. You know, I wonder how the humans built that. The humans didn't build it. It was the Anunnaki. It was the Anunnaki, or in this case, for those that don't want to hear the word Anunnaki too much, you know, aliens, people that are not from Earth, aliens, right? You know, they built these megalithic structures. And if you go to, like, you know, Egypt and you look at the temples, you look at the hieroglyphics, look at the depictions. They are literally drawing little people standing next to large people. Why would they lie about that?
And this is something that always fascinates me, since you mentioned the hieroglyphics of Egypt. Because I remember when I was a kid and we were learning about the pyramids and everything Egypt in school, and they told us that so you see how you have those small people, and then you have very large people, and the reason they gave is because they wanted to basically make you understand that this was an important person, right? So they draw him bigger, and then the slaves or whatever are smaller. Or they would say that's because they didn't understand, they didn't understand how to draw in perspective. That's why all their paintings and drawings are 2D, right? Like as they're carved or painted in a two-dimensional way. And then when
Yeah.
you grow up and you think about it, like, are you telling me that a civilization that built such insane monuments that are still
Right.
standing till today, that they can't even be rebuilt today to that level of
They don't. Yeah.
accuracy in a chisel and a hammer, they did not understand perspective. How does that even compute? You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't make
It
sense
doesn't
at
make no
all,
sense.
because it's as if you're talking about a civilization that barely invented a writing or drawing. Also, you're telling me at the
Yeah.
same time that they were building this stuff. Do you understand how much math and physics takes into building these monuments? We're not even talking about
Yeah.
them, how the size and how much, they're accurate to the cardinal, the north and the south. We're not even talking about that.
Mm.
Just the idea that
Yeah.
you're building these megalith structures in a desert and
Mm-hmm.
making sure that it does not sink into the sand. Like, how can
Mm.
they build something this heavy? What sort of base did you build for it so that it doesn't sink into the sand now 7,000 years later? And you're telling me, oh yeah, these people didn't really understand what was going on in science and biology and all
Yeah.
that. It
It
doesn't add
makes no,
up.
it doesn't, it's illogical to
It's
even
illogical.
assume that. So let's talk about, when you mentioned sands, I thought about the Pyramid of Giza, right?
Yeah.
So I think I want to hear your perspective on this, but the Pyramid of Giza, from my research, it is a stone computer.
Yep.
It
Yep.
has multiple purposes,
Conductor of energy. Yes. Yep.
conductor of energy. So let's talk about that.
Yeah.
First of all, where was the Pyramid of Giza built? On top of what? On top of, energy lines,
Yes. Yes.
the earth has lines, the grid lines, from longitude and latitude all over the place. And matter of fact, there's a thing called the 33rd parallel. I think they call it the 33rd degree line, and it's one of the most powerful energetic lines on the planet. If you
Yep.
guys go back and do history, and I'm not a real buff on the 33rd parallel, but from folks that I've talked to, I have a good friend named Brad Lair from the Awaken podcast. He's an expert at this, and he mentions that if you look back in history, almost every war, every paranormal situation that has happened has been on the 33rd parallel.
Nice.
And
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
believe the current Iran and Israel war, whatever, that's also on the 33rd parallel. Go
Yep.
figure, right? Duh.
Oh, also on the map,
So,
by the
but
way,
yeah.
to add to that is
Mhm.
that if you draw a line between the three pyramids of Giza and the pyramids that are in Latin America, in the Aztec pyramids, and the three pyramids in China, they all align. Like, it's one straight line,
Nah,
actually.
see?
So we're not even talking
Amazing.
about one civilization who understood this. We're talking about civilizations that
Yeah.
were connecting it across the globe. Like, they had a
But
way of
Sergio,
communicating.
what kind of intelligence would somebody need to have to be able to be so precise to align everything across the planet? What
I
kind of
mean, I mean,
knowledge would someone need to possess?
it's a technology that we don't understand. It's a technology that does not rely on our understanding of modern day technology. That you need a satellite, or you need, a mobile
Mm.
phone to connect and to see these things. These people or these beings used to connect on a more metaphysical level, if you want.
Mm.
They were traveling across the globe. They were connecting to each other across. They understood where those, like you said, those points of energies of Earth are, and they were harnessing that energy. There is an actual study over the pyramids, to go back to what you're saying about the
Mm.
pyramids of Giza, that they were almost like antennas of energy. Like, they were emitting, they would harness the energy from inside of the earth, and then the way it goes up through the different chambers, how
Mm.
it's built and how it connects, that on that top of the pyramid, it actually emits it sort of like an antenna, like a wave that
Yeah.
comes out one after the other. They were using that. And just to
Like
just
an
to
ancient Wi-Fi, right?
like an ancient Wi-Fi, exactly. And just to point out something, because we mentioned it earlier about the Egyptians themselves and their holographic. Regardless of everything that we're saying in terms of how they were built and all that, there is also a question that no one is able to answer, as to how come this ancient civilization in Egypt kept records of everything that they've done or everything they ever thought of, all their ideas, except
Yeah.
what perhaps is their greatest accomplishment, which is building the pyramids. There isn't a single drawing in the entirety of Egypt that shows you someone
Yeah.
building these monuments.
Why
It
is
also
that?
does not align with that civilization. These people drew everything. They were that's their entire culture, was to put it in hieroglyphics. And then they
Hmm.
chose not to talk about one of the biggest accomplishments. I have a theory
And that's
regarding
very
that.
interesting. No, no, no. I want to hear that theory because, I mean, well, here, actually, before you say your theory, I'm thinking, this is just me guessing, it, you know, the pyramid is such, I mean, it was built to stand the test of time.
Yep.
Like they were going to build it one time.
Yes.
And earlier I asked you, like, what kind of, knowledge would you need to be able to build these pyramids in different locations? You have to be an architect. You have
Yes.
to be an engineer of some type. And more importantly, the language of the universe, you have to be good in mathematics.
Oh yeah.
Mathematics.
Yep.
So somebody, I would not think that somebody going to build something as megalithic as the Pyramid of Giza. They're going to build it one time. They're not
Yes.
going to say, oops, they're not, the old,
Let's redo it.
these, these stupid stories about like, the humans chip, blocks. If anybody gets the opportunity to travel to Egypt, you will
I've
go
been to Egypt,
to
by the way. I've
any.
seen the
You've
pyramids.
been there? Okay,
Oh
so
yeah.
I want to hear about this too. But to finish off this comment, if you go to Egypt, look at these rocks, and you will see that every rock has been chiseled specifically for where it needs to go. It's not
Yep.
just cookie cutter, rinse and repeat. So based off of that, Sergio, I want to turn it back to you. Talk to me about, your travels over there to Egypt. What did you see firsthand, and give me some more information on the Pyramid of Giza if you have it.
So basically, the idea behind those pyramids and who built them, and this very to me, it's such an outdated theory from historians and archaeologists that they don't want to look into it again. Which is that so I did the math because I read this somewhere, and given that they would say, okay, so this is one of the pyramids, which is a tomb for one of the pharaohs, right? Let's say Khafra.
Right.
That's one of his pyramids.
Yeah.
So, which means that it had to be built during his time before he died. And the theory among archaeologists is that they were built within 25 to 30 years, right? If you do the math to how many stones exist within those pyramids and how much they weigh, which is anywhere between 30 to 100 tons each stone by itself. And over the period of 25 years, that means that those poor slaves had to place one block of stone next to another. They have to keep place them every 4 minutes. 4 minutes in order to achieve that pyramid in 25 years. 4 minutes. I did the actual math, and I invite people to actually do the math.
Math.
It's insane.
Math is beautiful.
To think that they were built in 25 years if this is how they thought it. Every 4 minutes, they have to put one. It's as if you're, like
Hey,
even if
Sergio,
you put
let me add this though.
it will take you longer.
Yeah, let me add this though. What about the because there's so many theories of how the pyramids were made. What do you think about the theory about people's they were saying that the slaves used chicken bone to carve the stones. Did you hear that?
No, not the chicken bone.
Yeah, they say they use they use chicken bones because again, if you think about this, let's say we take away the Anunnaki, right? The Anunnaki aren't even here. Let's say it's just human beings.
Right.
What tools did they have?
Exactly.
They had they had stones, and they had chicken bones.
Right. Well, makes sense. Makes sense. It's
so
chicken bone.
So just thinking about it. So if nobody wants to think about aliens, okay, take them out of the equation. Then you tell me, how did they? And matter of fact, if you look at where the Pyramid of Giza is and the other pyramids right next to it, it's in the middle of the desert. Where did they get the
Yes.
stone and the mud? And matter of fact, if you do also the math, the amount of mud that they would need to create is more than, it's more than the pyramid.
Yep.
It's more than the pyramid, to
Exactly.
make a ramp to go each level up is more than the pyramid and everything. So either way, what human in our Egyptian history did they say that this person was the architect of this?
Exactly.
They don't say anything. They don't say anything, right?
No one is
go for it.
claiming. No one is claiming.
No one's claiming it.
Credit for it, which is a very weird thing for them because
Which is weird, right?
That's what they did. They just took credit for everything. So I would not think that there was like an architect who was like, no, don't mention me. I'm good.
Don't mention me.
Don't
I'm
mention
humble.
me.
Yeah.
Exactly. So once you actually go there, you see them. It's I don't know how to explain it because as much as you've heard about it, and as much as you think they're large, you don't really understand how large they are. You're looking at something that you don't really, your mind cannot grasp how large these things are. It's really like it took me by such surprise. I'm like, this is insane. Like each block of stone is taller than me, and then it keeps going up and up and up. Like how was this done?
Oh yeah, just how.
And the second thing that along with because the entire Giza plateau that you have, so you have those three main pyramids, you have smaller pyramids on the sides, and then you have obviously the Sphinx, right? And the Sphinx is also such a big deal when it comes to Egyptian mythology. Right. It's also a big deal when it comes to how it was built, why it was built, what is the symbolism behind him, and all of that. And there's also a theory when it comes to the Sphinx that it wasn't really built by the Egyptians, just like the pyramids weren't built, but perhaps that the Egyptians had a hand in altering the Sphinx. Because when you look at the body of the Sphinx, it's a very clear representation of a lion. You have the whole body, you have the tail, you have the way it's sitting, and you also have smaller archaeological findings of actual Sphinx that have a lion head. It exists in the Cairo Museum, so it's not something that they wouldn't have created. It does exist. However, when you look at the face, it's an extremely small face compared to the rest of the body. It does not work from a geometrical point of view. And
it's not
there
proportionate.
is no way that a society, proportionately, is very, very wrong. And there's no way from a society that built those pyramids and built the body of the Sphinx that they would make this sort of mistake by building such a small head on such an out of proportion body. So it's clear that the body was originally a lion, and then one of the pharaohs that was in power commissioned it to be carved into his own face, and then took the credit that, no, this was entirely built under my ruling, which is not true. Because it even aligns with the way that the Sphinx is pointing. So it looks at a constellation, which is the Leo constellation. So when you look back in time towards that, around 7,000 to 10,000 years ago, if the lion, the Sphinx was looking into basically his own constellation, which is the constellation of the Leo. So that also aligns with that. Now, my theory is that these monuments were built by a much advanced civilization, whether aliens or whether pre-Adamites or pre-humans. That's not the debate here. They were built by someone else, a society and a culture that understood technology in a way that we don't understand it. So my theory is that they were built and left there for whatever reason happening, whether it was the floods, whether it was wars, whether it was apocalyptic events. And then a nomadic society that would have been going through the desert around 10,000 years ago or 7,000 years ago would have came across a site that has 3 extremely large pyramids and a lion that is basically guarding them. Now, from the mind of a nomadic society at the time, they would interpret it as this is a holy site, something that is basically a sign for us to build our entire civilization around. And that's what I think has happened. So they settled there, and then they built the entire Egyptian society behind it, and they claimed that they were for themselves. But I believe that these monuments existed for hundreds of thousands of years before we as human or modern day human claimed it for their own. And this is backed by another finding that now people are seeing, which is because of the melting of the ice caps, Antarctica is, melting slowly. And you can see there's a pyramid that exists in Antarctica. I don't know if you have come across that
Yeah.
or not.
Yeah,
So
I have. Yeah.
that pyramid, if proven to be an actual pyramid, means that a civilization built it there before the Ice Age, which means around 200,000 years ago. So this also
Yeah.
proves that there was an ancient civilization that existed and used these pyramids all over the globe. It's just that some
Mhm.
parts were frozen over because of the Ice Age, some parts were flooded by certain things, and that's how we sort of lost this contact to this ancient civilization.
Yeah. Oh man, no. Well, I love the theories, and I completely agree with them too. And regarding, so again, for those of you that don't know, pyramids don't just exist in Egypt. They're
Right?
they're
Exactly.
all over the world. You can find us
Yep.
on Google, and they'll show you the exact locations. There's pyramids in Bosnia,
Yep.
in China. There's pyramids under the water. Matter of fact, recently I just saw that there was they found out there's at the Bermuda Triangle there's a pyramid right
I saw
underneath
that.
there, and it's
Yep.
bigger, and it's
Yes.
bigger than Giza,
Even the one in
which
Bosnia,
that's
by the way, is bigger than Giza. And archaeologists refuse
see,
to go dig there and actually discover, find out whether it's an. They say no, it's just a mountain. Even though if you look at it, it has four
yeah,
sides. Like that's not what a mountain
yeah.
looks like.
A mountain
So
does not do
yeah,
that.
yeah,
It got they let it, and I know that the Japanese or China or wherever these pyramids are over there, they don't want people coming over there to look at them, so
true.
they let the vegetation just kind of grow over it, and they just
Yes.
kind of want you to ignore it because they don't want people over there looking at, they
Yep.
may know what's going on, but other folks don't. But it's like if so many pyramids or whoever this architect was, which from my studies, it was an Anunnakian called Thoth.
So yep, yep.
The Atlantean key spring. He wrote also what's known as the Emerald Tablets, and in
Tablets.
there, if you
Yes.
guys get a chance, read that. It's an amazing story. It's basically him, writing down the secrets of the universe, why, how creation was built, why, he even explains why they did it. And there's also a lot of different explanation in the Emerald of Tablets that talk about, ways to meditate, even ways to break away from the matrix. So if you
Yes.
guys get a chance, look that up and do your research on that. But where I was getting at was the architect that built all these pyramids, they were putting them on these energy grid lines because they were trying to build civilizations there, or in this case, to be more precise, they were creating breakaway civilizations, because don't
Yes.
forget, they came from a different place, from the Palladians, right? So they already had a civilization. So when they come to another planet and they start creating civilization and they start putting in their knowledge and the rules, that's called a breakaway civilization, which
Yep.
is eventually what we are trying to do in Mars. We are
Yep.
trying to create a breakaway civilization in Mars and everything. So it's funny how it's kind of coming for humanity. It's coming full circle in some sense, because let's dive into Mars. We talked about the Anunnaki coming from the heavens
Mhm.
down below, and if everybody keep in mind that the humans back then, they didn't have words for certain
Yes.
things that they saw, so when they speak, they speak in metaphors or in riddles, or like kind of like Shakespearean, or whatever. We now know what they're talking about. So these Sergio mentioned the Ajiji, which was part of the Anunnaki. They were actually working in Mars, building a civilization there and things like that. But they came with the original Anunnaki about 450,000 years ago, and then the Ajiji worked for 250,000 years, according to these ancient tablets, with no break. You know,
Right.
and this goes back to Sergio's story about when he mentioned about they rebelled with Enki and Enlil because they felt that they were being treated like slaves. And they're like, hey, whoa, we volunteered to come and help this breakaway civilization, but you guys got us working to death. So when they rebelled or started a riot or a coup, Enki, like Sergio mentioned, was on Earth.
Yes.
That was base camp. So the Ajiji came from Mars, down from above down to below. So this is when the humans were down there. They're like, wow, it's the angels or the Nephilim or whatever they were calling them and everything. But they didn't know what was going on because the humans were just working there. So I just kind of want to connect that dot to why the scriptures say from the heavens down to below, or why that term Anunnaki exists, because they were just part of the Anunnaki group, were pissed. They were mad. And what's even funny in the text, they even said, we don't have women.
Right. Exactly.
So when some of the Ajiji, when some of them left, when they left Earth and they went back somewhere, they took women with them. They took human women with them.
Which is, by the way, it's written in the Bible. In the actual Bible, it's written that at the time after Cain and Abel and that story, that people came down from the heavens and mated with the women, with the humans. It's actually there. We're not even making up stories here. You know what I mean? Like, it's just written.
It's even in there. But people people read over it, or they don't understand it. So
exactly.
So to add what Sergio just said, by the Anunnaki mating with these human women, this is where you get the Nephilim.
Yep.
Okay.
The giant.
This is where the Nephilim is. So the giants, the Cyclops, whatever creatures that you see now in myth lore, these were the Nephilim. So I want to make sure that everybody understands the connection between where did the Nephilim come. The Nephilim didn't come from the skies down below. They were created here when the aliens were mating with the humans.
Yep.
So
exactly.
Because Sergio,
originally, it was a different way. So when the first humans were created, they were being mixed with the DNA of the Anunnaki and the Homo sapiens sapiens. And then once the modern man came, and then there was a direct mating between those beings and the humans, that's when you get the Nephilims and all the other stuff that you mentioned. Yes.
Exactly. No, I appreciate that. And then, and this is why, and then there are some Anunnaki that didn't leave. They stayed here. Right. The majority of the Anunnaki left because if anybody watches like Star Trek, they have this thing called the Prime Directive, where they say that an advanced species shouldn't interact with the lower civilization because it'll ruin things, right? Well, the Anunnaki did that. Yes. They messed with our natural evolution. So eventually, whoever they report to said, you guys need to get out of there.
Which is why some of them left. Which is why what you were saying about Thoth and the Pleiadians had to interfere, the Andromedas had to interfere, because they realized that what has happened on Earth was kind of like an unnatural growth of civilization. And that is why there were so many across the centuries that were sent to Earth, basically to tell us, there is more than this. You are more powerful. You can break away from this idea. You can break away from the matrix, and so on, so on. Because they knew that the manner in which humanity was created was extremely unnatural. It broke the sort of like the galactic federal oath, if you want, or the rules. So and the Anunnaki were shunned because of it. So they were, when you hear stories in the Bible and you hear stories in other mythologies about wars happening in the sky, right? Like angels fighting demons and all that. They're talking about actual wars. I really love how you use the idea that that they did not have the actual words or vocabulary to explain what they were looking at. So they would attribute it to the closest thing that they would understand, or they would be able to describe
Right.
it. This is very
In that
evident
time. Yeah.
in the Bible. So there is the Book of Kings, and when there's a mention of Elijah and how he was taken to heaven, if you want, and there's this chariot of fire. Let me just I'll open it here because I have it from. So it
Yeah. Yeah.
says, this is verse 11 in the Book of Kings, and it says, wait, 11. And as they were walking along and talking, behold, a chariot of fire separated the two of them, and Elijah went up by a whirlwind into heaven. And Elisha was watching, and he was crying. And then this is the chariot of Israel and all that. So you're literally describing something. So imagine it from a very primitive mind, that they're seeing something that has fire in it, right? So it's like a box that has fire from under it, and it's coming down, and then the person he's with is being swept up into that chariot, right? This is an actual alien abduction, by the way. Like what they describe as an actual alien. That's what people talk about right now. When people report alien abductions or what they went through, they say that we saw this big spaceship that had fire in it because of the thrusters, and then there was a light that came and it pulled us up. So he's literally describing an alien abduction, but he used the words that he would understand at the time, which is chariot, fire, and something that picked him up into the heavens, into heaven. But it's not into heaven; it's actually just into the sky. Up.
You mentioned the when you read that, you mentioned that, and they saw that he got lifted in like a whirlwind. That reminded me like what happens. I'm not saying it was a helicopter, but a helicopter, whenever it takes off, it starts creating all this wind, right? So some machine that was taken off creates a whirlwind. So we can understand that now in our context, but you got to give these people a little break here. They were doing their best to describe something that was completely out of their comprehension.
100%. Yep. Even
Sergio,
when Moses would.
Yeah. No. I was finish your thought, and then I wanted to ask you something else.
Sure. So even like when they would be talking about Moses, for example, and how he would be in contact with God, so he would go into the special tent, and then a light beam comes down, and then he would talk to God. And they mentioned that later on, because he was talking to him so much, his face became a little bit white, And the explanation is that because he's seeing God, but it's actually like more like radiation, you know what I mean, to actual fuel and to that sort of nuclear energy or whatever they were using at the time, and they would not understand what was happening with them as a physical reaction to them being exposed to these sort of contacts and these sort of beings. They wouldn't get it, so they just explained it in a different way. But we are actually talking about like a radioactive poisoning and radiation.
Yeah, I love that. So Sergio, I can definitely talk to you all day about the Egyptian, because this is completely interesting, and there's so many different rabbit holes or hallways or chambers that we can go into regarding that. So I'm going to have you come back here for a part 2, where we're going to talk about the religion aspect and your perspective and your understanding of what religion is today and where did it come from before. As I wrap up this episode, I always ask my guests 3 questions. So I'm going to ask you these 3 questions. I just want to hear your answer, and there is no right or wrong answer, right?
Sure.
So the first question is this: if you could send a message to humanity that everyone would hear, what would it be?
Wow. Always question everything that you taught. Always. That's I feel like that's the most important thing. Even what I'm saying right now, don't believe it 100%. Just go question it, research it, read about it, make your own understanding. Don't just accept what people say. Reach the conclusion through your own research. So
Love it. Thank you. What is one mystery of the universe that you wish that you could solve?
Ooh, only one? There's so much.
The only one.
The
If you
only
could
one.
snap your finger and solve this, what would it be?
I would say it's a definitely more spiritual answer for me. So not something related to whatever we're talking or on Earth or something. I would want to understand, like there's something so ingrained in me. I want to understand this nature of creation. Like, what is this divine consciousness, as you call it, or this entire aspect of creation? Like, how did it come to be? What is it exactly? And yeah, like that's what I want to understand. I want to understand it outside of the rules of the third dimension. Like, see it like that.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And the last question would be this. Beyond all the knowledge and experiences that you've gained, what still leaves you in awe and makes you question everything?
What leaves me in awe? I think overall the just how, like, the history of this planet, of everything on it, regardless of who's right and who's wrong, regardless of what stories stick or not, just the fact that there is life on this planet, that there is such, like the way it works is so different from other places. And to me, it's just so special. What I mean? Like, it's such an interesting existence, or life that happens here. The way nature is so abundant, the way everything interacts, there's so much harmony and just makes so much sense. It's self-contained. I really find it extremely fascinating. Like, you don't need anything. Everything is that is to me is such a nice idea.
I love it. I love it. And I want to give you the last word. Is there, outside of answering those questions, is there one last thing you want to say to the audience? And then, if so, also, again, if people want to get a hold of you and reach out to you and ask you questions and things like that, how can they reach out to you?
Sure. I mean, first of all, yeah, like I said, no matter what we talk about here, no matter how many different podcasts that you listen to and all that, like you said earlier, we always encourage people to do their own research, just to read, make up your own mind after you read it. You could come back to the same conclusions you had before. That's fine. But at least it will be your own conclusion. Don't just accept the ideas that were pushed on you when you were a kid, that you were indoctrinated into, brainwashed into. To me, that's like, there is nothing more important than knowledge in this world. Like, I feel like I'm an agent of knowledge. I need, like, it just needs to spread as much as possible. So that's my main need. I just keep searching. And in terms of where I am and all that, so I have, my podcast, which is Paradigm Shifts with Sergio Halabi. You can find me on all podcast channels. And I have an Instagram page, which is called the Paradigm Shift Experience. So you can find me on Instagram. That's usually people, reach out to me more through DMs and stuff like that, to like talk to me or ask me questions. So I'm always available there. And yeah, hopefully also on the next episode of this show as well. So yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And again, folks, Sergio, thanks a lot for, for coming on this episode. I mean, you are a wealth of information, and I like that you and I shared the same understanding of the Egyptian history and the culture and where we are today and where we're going into the future. Folks, if you are listening on podcasts, on Spotify, give me those 5 stars. The algorithm helps me out. It goes a long way to spread this content. If you're watching me on Rumble or on YouTube, subscribe, like it, share with at least one person. If you think that there's somebody, a friend of yours, a family member might enjoy this conversation, send it to them. I appreciate all the support that you guys can do that for me. And as I always end my episodes, I always, continue to encourage you to keep asking questions. make sure that you push beyond that boundary of the known and
Yep.
continue to go beyond the frequency.